Okay, can we wait for another 2 or 3 minutes, or we can start?
If all the presenters are here, then I think we
I
can
see.
start. Right. I
Okay.
see. I think the presenters have joined, but let us check nonetheless. I
Mm,
I can see. Is Dr. Medha Bhadra Chaudhary? Yes, yes, she's here.
okay, so yeah, yeah. So we
I,
can
I
start.
I
Yeah.
think we start here.
Okay.
Right.
So very
So
good afternoon. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. Please go
I
with the
see.
introduction first.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I, Shouram Mukhopadhyay, on behalf of uh, Chandrakona Vidyasagar Mahavidyalaya, would like to welcome you all in this session. And this is the second day of International and Interdisciplinary Conference on Globalization's Impact on Society, Culture, and Education, organized by CBM in collaboration with Institute for Cross-Cultural Studies and Academic Exchange, Burlington, NC, USA. And to start the proceeding, let me introduce Dr. Swati Maitra, who will be chairing this session. And Dr. Maitra is Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Brutus College, University of Calcutta, and she is a recipient of Charles Wallace Fellowship and also the recipient of SHARP Research development grant for BIPOC scholars. And also, I would like to introduce Dr. Ved Prakash. I think he's not here, and who will be the co-chair of the session. So, over to you, madam.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Mukhopadhyay, for this wonderful introduction. So, good afternoon and welcome everybody to session 4A. Now, I apologize in advance for the slight delay in starting this session. I'm afraid to admit that I personally am among the responsible for this because our session ran late. So that is why we had to take a 15-minute break. But we are all here now. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the first speaker, who is Dr. Medha Bhadra Chaudhuri, Department of English from St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. Uh, Dr. Chaudhuri completed her graduation in English Honours from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and her post graduation in English from Jadavpur University. She has been a PhD research scholar at the Department of English, Jadavpur University, and was awarded her doctoral degree in 2022. Her thesis was on the memoirs and the oral history of women survivors of the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971. Her areas of specialization include gender and memory studies, and she takes an interest in women's writing and feminist theory. She is currently working in the position of an assistant professor in English at St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. So, she's going to talk about globalization and the challenges of localization, digital entertainment in India. So, without wasting further time, Dr. Chaudhuri, please go on and speak. You have 15 minutes.
Am I audible? I have a approach, so might sounds, but I'll in my paper. This is on digital entertainment in India, and the proliferation of has led to various cultural practices in India, and taking the rise of different cultural practices in the 1980s in India, we found and Bridge essentially located these aneurysm of public culture. And public culture, as they have argued in all texts, to protect diverse modes and cosmopolitan experience that are really about the modern media by consumption and by technology. So they have argued that by consuming various media mediated digital sensibilities, have entered into this development pivotal role in this cosmopolitan experience, by bridging the global and the local in many new ways. But Breckenridge and Arthur also consider this public culture as processes. And this is a zone of contestation that defines public modernity in India, which is neither a homogeneous public nor a uniform modernity. And there are a variety of ways in which this public modernity is made visible in India, and digital media, digital entertainment is one of them. So the Indian online entertainment segment has witnessed an unprecedented growth in recent times, and technological developments are constantly reshaping the existing sort of media ecology, by unleashing a new set of entertainment forms and modes. So the proliferation of several digital video streaming platforms has altered the landscape of media and the entertainment industry in India. So the online space is offering a wide range of content, which includes web series, comedy, and other local narratives, which are streaming directly to audiences through these digital platforms. And along with the major international OTT streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, the digital space is also sort of flooded with Indian digital video platforms like Voot and Z5 and Alt Balaji, So the Indian entertainment landscape, which was dominated by mainstream media like television and cinema, has been challenged by these video streaming platforms, with their new age narratives and different content and genres. So in India, it is which has witnessed an OTT explosion. There are now more than 30 OTT video platforms, and this digital sort of eruption has moved a significant amount of entertainment online. Also, there is secondly the remarkable transformation in internet infrastructures, especially mobile broadband connectivity, and the emergence of a range of transnational digital media platforms since the late 2000s has transformed the circulation and the consumption of media entertainment. So even as powerful digital platforms and portals like YouTube and Amazon Prime have made inroads into a dense and highly competitive media market. Media conglomerates, with deep roots in television and in music industries, have also launched their own portals and platforms. So for example, Hotstar, which belongs to Star Network, or Eros Now, Hoichoi, which is a part of SVF Entertainment. So they have sort of leveraged extensive media libraries, and they are now producing their own original programming, making their presence felt really. So by their strategic sort of extension policy, such streaming platforms are investing in the creation of localized content, and in most of the cases, producing quality content for regional audiences. So it has helped in shifting the audience base from cinema and television towards online streaming platforms. And also, again, it is reached out to a local audience. But regardless of how these platforms sort of originated, every online portal and digital platform has had to contend with the socio-cultural, the political, and the economic significance of regional languages, and the tastes of regional audiences in their quest to sort of carve out a distribution territory. So even a cursory scan of the business publications and mainstream sort of news coverage will indicate that the digitalization of media entertainment in India has also been accompanied by anxieties about regionalization, which are coursing through these streaming video companies. Also, we must understand that these digital platforms have given rise to a sense of media regionalism, and it has a renewed sort of regional media geography, which is both transnational and it's involved with the transmedial process. So the Anglophone North Atlantic region is no longer the basis of our universal claims. It is no longer dictating the emergent screen culture. And after all, media globalization it is by no means a Western phenomenon. These digital distribution and streaming video networks have expanded their footprints. They're creating new circuits for the flow of media content, which are crisscrossing national, linguistic, other political, and cultural borders. So we must contend that media and trends in digital entertainment emerge through a complex interaction of local and regional, global, as well as national forces. And there are other factors, including state policy and technological advances, and also sort of venture capitalism. But far from leading to a homogenized world system in which Anglo-American media or culture and value systems sort of overwhelm local cultures everywhere. The globalization of media has given rise to a new and a highly hybrid scale and form of cultural production. So, the technological, the institutional, cultural changes that mark the 2 decades of media globalization have transformed media entertainment into a complex, multidimensional
Um, is Medha's internet working?
I think some internet issues
Yeah, I
were
think
there. Yeah,
we've
yeah.
lost her for a
Lost
bit.
our internet.
Mm. We'll give it a minute. Let's see.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I think she's been logged out now. And I
Yes,
will.
yes, left. Yeah.
Shurab, I'll give it a couple of minutes more, and if Dr. Chaudhary is unable to log back in, then we'll move onwards to the next
Next,
one.
next speaker. Okay, absolutely. Madam, next speaker, I think you should go.
Too, I think so too.
Yeah.
So I can see that Tanzit Tanay is there. So if one of you, Shurab, if you or any of the other organizers could reach out to Dr. Chaudhary and let her know that she can come back and complete the session paper later.
Okay,
So I
okay.
think she had about 5 minutes left anyway.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
without further ado, I'm going to go on to the next speaker, who is Tanzit Tonoy, Department of English, University of Rajshahi, Bangladesh. He's going to talk about globalization and sectoral politics, analyzing contemporary debates. Now, before we speak, I want to, of course, introduce him. Danvik Tonoy is currently a student at Rajshahi University, pursuing his MA in English Literature. He has a keen interest in cultural studies and language. Introduced through literature to the former, he's studying different aspects of cultural studies. The fascinating domain of human communication through language has led him to start working on the languages of ethnic people. His current work includes building an archive of containing all the lingual and cultural data of ethnic people residing in northern Bangladesh. Tanzit aspires to pursue a career in academia so that he can keep on researching on different legal and cultural issues. So, welcome, Tanzit. Please speak. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you for giving me the floor. And hello, everyone. As Swati Moitra has already introduced me, I'm Tanjit Tonoy, currently pursuing my master's in English literature in University of Rajshahi. So, without further ado, let us hop into our presentation. The topic I'm presenting today is sartorial politics, globalization sartorial politics, analyzing the contemporary debates. So, sartorial politics or sartoriality. So, what is sartoriality? Sartoriality is about dressing or clothing. So, dress and clothes, as you all know, is a fundamental marker of human civilization. It is one of the five human basic needs, and as a human basic need, it is part of our culture. Culture, we all know, according to Raymond Williams, is a set of values and meanings. So, anything we wear represents our identity through those very meanings and values. So, when culture, so there are different cultures throughout the world, and globalization brings this culture together in globalization brings this culture together, and when different cultures come together and they mingle and interlace with each other, uh, it's a part of basic human nature. So what globalization does, it actually brings cultures together. Different cultures mingles with each other. They're introduced to each other, and there are some fundamental parts of every culture, sets of values and meanings. And when they are introduced to each other, some part of them are rejected by the another one. Some part of it is not accepted by the other one, and some part of it is actually
Is Tanzir audible to everybody else?
No, 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 no.
Oh, no.
He
No,
is not
no, no,
audible.
no.
What a if we
Digital platform.
literally.
Yeah.
Again, we'll follow the same policy, give him a couple
Yes, absolutely.
of logged out.
Yeah.
2 minutes, we'll give it.
Okay. Okay, 2 minutes.
Excuse me, this is Sakib Abra Tasnim. Tanzit Tono is with me and he is having some technical difficulties. We
Okay.
are trying to work it out and we'll get back soon, hopefully. Thank you for your patience.
Dr. Mohito, for the time being, I
We'll have to move
think Dr.
on.
Chaudhary, yeah.
Yes, we'll have to.
Yeah.
I think, Dr. Chaudhary, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Since you were talking about digital platforms and how much of that is explained,
Yeah.
this will continue from there.
Yeah, sure. So there is therefore, as I said, so there are new platforms which are now coming up, which are catering to a regional audience, and regardless of their origin story, every online platform and digital platform has had to contend with socio-cultural, political, and economic significance of regional languages in order to carve out, distribution territory and to stake a claim for audience shares. So even a cursory scan of any standard business publication or mainstream news coverage on the digitalization of media entertainment in India will reveal the anxieties about regionalization which are coursing through these streaming video companies. And these digital platforms have given rise to a sense of media regionalism, and it has sort of renewed regional media geography both through a transnational and a transmedial process. So it is an important reminder that the Anglophone North Atlantic region is not the basis for universal claims about emergent screen cultures. After all, media globalization is by no means solely a Western phenomenon. No? And digital distribution and streaming video networks have expanded their footprints, and they are creating new circuits for the flow of media content, which are crisscrossing national, linguistic, and other political and cultural borders. So one must contend with the fact that media and trends in digital entertainment emerge through a complex interaction of local, regional, global, as well as national forces and factors, which include lots of things, state policy, technological advances, venture capitalism. So far from leading to a homogenized world system in which Anglo-American media and culture and values are overwhelming local cultures everywhere, the globalization of media has given rise to a new and a highly hybrid form of cultural production. So, the technological, institutional, and cultural changes that marked the 2 decades of media globalization across Asia, form the backdrop against which we need to understand this hybridity, the growing hybridity of content produced in India. So, despite one thing, one curious thing is that despite the globalization of entertainment, the content produced on these platforms does not entirely break down old stereotypes. And popular cinematic genres and tropes are churned out constantly. The traditional views of class, gender, and cultural difference are being commonly projected. And this leads to a kind of homogenization of content despite the variety that it provides. So this paper will attempt to analyze this issue on the basis of one case study. That is, the first web series that I will examine is Delhi Crime, which is there on Netflix, and it is set in New Delhi in the context of the 2012 gang rape case. So the protagonist is a female officer, DCP Vartika Chaturvedi, and she's Western educated. She's politically aware and emancipated, and she's assigned a case which she proceeds to solve with the help of a junior female officer. The symbolic organization of a gendered urban space is traced in this web series. And there is, of course, the issue focuses on the safety of the female body in the city, working within the categories of the public and the private. So the presence of a female investigating officer, on the one hand, provides an alternative paradigm. It's a different embodied idea, suggesting that spatial divisions within the city are not always gendered in obvious ways. So by putting herself out of place, the protagonist not only unsettles the dominant order of social space, but creates spaces of movement for herself. So the notion of gendered space is not restricted merely to the idea that certain locations are mapped as masculine or feminine, but that meanings emerge from a far more complex interaction. That is what the show tells us. So in a sense, the setting of the web series, the metropolis or New Delhi, would be seen as a potential site of freedom for women. The metropolis offers women new social and spatial liberties, and in the case of Vartika, political visibility. However, one of the starkest forms in which gender difference and gender inequality appear in this context is in the geography of violence against women, which is reinforced here. The web series reinforces the perception of the urban space as restricted by the logic of sexual dominance and fear. So the gendering of space becomes especially evident in this geography of danger, as women's fear of male violence is manifested through the representation of the victim. So Delhi Crime can on one hand be regarded as a celebration of female agency and an assertion of the efficacy of somebody, a woman in a position of authority, also the need to express a woman's autonomy. But it ironically establishes a sense of patriarchal fear and apprehension. And this normative representation of a corrupt police system and criminal belonging to an oppressed, marginalized community feeds into the popular tropes of crime drama that are a usual part of Hindi cinema and that appeal to a pan Indian sensibility. So the visuals created between the local and the global, as it were, are enacted visually and orally for the audiences in the web series. Um, I will end my presentation here because I can see that my internet connection is fluctuating again. Was I audible?
Yes, absolutely. And it was
Okay,
fantastic to listen to you.
thank you. Thank
Thank you for your paper. Despite the truncated nature of the
you.
two halves, we still had a
Yeah.
good time listening to you. I'd like to request everybody to keep their questions either in their minds or type it in the comments box. And I see that our second presenter is probably not back yet due to their internet issues. So, what we are going to do is that we are going to move on to the next presenter, who is Proshenjit Mondol. Proshenjit, are you present here? Um, I don't see him here at all. Uh, Saurabh, am I missing him or is he
No, no,
logged?
no, no.
He's
He
not.
is not here. He is not here.
Okay.
Prashanjit Mondal is not here.
Sriyoshi Mitra, are you present?
Yes, yes, Yoshimut is present.
So we are going to move on to our next presenter, who is Shreyoshi Mitra, and she's going to present a paper on philosophical debates on cultural evolution. She's a research scholar at the Department of Philosophy, University of Gorbongo. So without further ado, Shreyoshi, welcome. Please speak. Shreyoshi, is Shreyoshi not here?
Yoshimut is present, but I think for the time being,
Okay.
Yoshimut is
We'll just
present.
give her a couple minutes to join back in. If you're able to reach her, perhaps do
Okay,
other things
okay,
in this.
okay. Yoshimitsu, are you present? Hello?
I can actually see Shreyoshi here.
Yeah, I also. I'm also. Yes, yes, yes.
Hi, Shreyoshi. Welcome. Welcome. Please speak.
Actually, I cannot hear anything. There was a hello. Am I audible?
I mean, I can't hear you at all.
Ma'am, may I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please speak. Shreyoshi?
Hello.
Yes, you're audible. Please speak.
Hello.
Yes, Shreyoshi, please start speaking. We are running out of time now. Hello?
Now I'm going to present my paper. The title of my paper. Hello?
Yes, Shreyoshi, please speak.
Ma'am, may I audible?
Yes, you are.
The title of my paper is Philosophical Debate on Cultural Evolution. First of all, I want to clear that I am a student of philosophy. That is because I want to explore my paper in a philosophical way. Now I'm going to start. Dalits are generally known as untouchables. They are untouchables because of their occupation, which are polluted and impure that are followed by them from the old tradition. The Hindu caste tradition employed a definite hierarchical status to an individual. Dalits are neglected and marginalized because of their economic status,
Shorab, have you been able to reach out to Shreyoshi? Because I think she's been logged out.
No, 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 no.
Okay, so
I'm
I'll
not
give
able
it
to.
another couple of minutes. Now, Tatik has already informed
Okay.
us that he is unable to join back in due to technical difficulties. So we'll give Shreyoshi a
Okay.
little bit more time to log back in if she's able to. But if she's not, then we'll go on ahead and ask questions to our first presenter in this unfortunately
Yeah.
truncated session.
Okay.
Okay, Shorab,
Yes, yes.
have you been able to reach out to? I think she's also lost her internet connection completely.
So,
So I'm
so
afraid
she,
to call on this matter right now.
hmm,
And given that she's unable to join back in as well, I think we will just treat this as a truncated session and ask questions of our first presenter instead, who unfortunately has had the dubious distinction of being the only person being able to complete their presentation. Right, probably the distinction we would have preferred, but nonetheless. Now, does anybody else have questions for Medha? Because if you don't, I do. I don't see any questions on the in the comments box, Medha. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions on my
Yeah.
end. And no, what I'm curious about is, again, as you have rightly pointed out, that the OTT platforms have not only proliferated, but they've also now reached out to regional content makers and regional content making. Example of Hoichoi in India or Churki in Bangladesh are just a couple of examples of how across South Asia, Pakistan has its own OTT platforms as well. So my question here is, what does this fragmentation of the OTT landscape mean for consumers, who at times are tempted to, as we see, for instance, Airtel offers these bundles. Is it effectively another form of the cable television bundling of OTT channels, as we earlier we even see now? And secondly, uh, how do OTT platforms, which ostensibly have a lot more uh, space in comparison to, say, the traditional media, how do platforms negotiate with questions of regulation? These are the two questions I had to ask you.
Right. So I'll take up the first question where you mentioned that there is a proliferation of OTT platforms. There are several platforms from which we can choose from, and I think that just sort of indicates, sort of the availability of a variety of content which were previously and since liberalization, the post-liberalization period when we see the emergence of cable television, there was still, and you talk about regulation, so I'll take up that as well. There was still sort of a sense of board. There were sort of government agencies which would actively take a part in, censoring or in sort of in terms of the production of the kind of content, the digital content that would be shown on the television. Now I think with the emergence of these OTT platforms, and most of these OTT platforms are sort of owned by these conglomerates, these global conglomerates, and also even within India, as you talk about, SVF or the other local Z5, the homegrown brand, so as to speak, the homegrown OTT platforms, there is a certain sort of corporatization, which is also in a sense changing the landscape, changing the digital landscape. So the kind of control that government agencies would previously sort of exercise on the content being produced and distributed is now being negotiated by the influx of these private companies, these multinational companies, which are foraying into the subcontinent. So therefore, there is the availability of more content, but like you said, it is something quite similar to the cable television in terms of the number of channels that would be offered to the Indian public, to the Indian audiences. But here, I think one of the major advantages of these OTT platforms is that when you think about globalization, it is bringing the audience closer to a global audience. So if we look at these web series, some of the web series which are now accessible on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, it is whether or not, I mean, depend irrespective of our location or geographical or cultural location, it is really putting us in touch with global trends, and also sort of leading to local regional sort of media to absorb some of these global sort of trends, to sort of change, to hybridize themselves, and sort of diversify the kind of content they're producing. I hope that's sort of managed to answer your question. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. quite scattered and all over the place.
That's absolutely perfect. Does anybody else have any questions for our first presenter? Uh, I see she logged back in and then logged back out again. Her internet is probably not really helping the case right now. Uh, if we don't have any other questions, then Shurab, shall we take the 15 minutes break and move on to the next section of
Yeah,
the
absolutely. It will be right. So we shall
okay.
take 15 minutes break.
All right. Thank you so much for your paper, Medha, and for Shurab
Thank
for
you.
making this possible in the first place. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good afternoon to everyone. This is the second half of the truncated session, so to speak. Dr. Prokas is present here, I think. Dr. Prokas, are you present here?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Dr. Prokas will be the coach here. So since Dr. Moitro is not in these sessions, or I think she will join, so I think we can start. So Dr. Prokas, I think over to you, sir. So you can start.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. I'm down with cold, so don't mind if I cough in between. All right. So I welcome all the presenters to this particular session. I believe the first half is over. And in the second half, we actually had three papers scheduled, but I believe the first presenter is not with us. So I believe without wasting any time, we can begin with the paper by Saheli Saha from Calcutta University, Kolkata. And Saheli will be reading her paper on a case study on the effect of modernization of indigenous culture and education of Toto tribes dwellings indoors. Right? So just to cross check, Nirbachita Pragga is not with us, if I'm not mistaken. And Saheli, I believe you can begin with your paper.
Thank you, sir.
All
So,
right.
am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay,
And
sir.
also, because we don't have the first speaker, so maybe you can take roughly around 20 minutes, right? Uh, and I'll just keep a tab in terms of the time and I'll remind you when it's about to be 20
Okay,
minutes.
sir.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon, ma'am, and all the presenters here. I am Shohili Shaha, and I am very much grateful to the conference team of Chandrakona Vidyashakhar Mahavidyalaya for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. So, is this visible, sir?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, sir. So we cannot ignore modernization. It's everywhere, but it has its benefits and consequences also. In this presentation, I would like to discuss about the effect of modernization on indigenous culture and education of Toto tribes dwelling indoors. So the first question is, who are Totos? So Totos are one of Duars-based Indo-Bhutanese primitive tribal group. They reside only in a small village named Totopara. Over the years, they were able to protect their indigenous culture and traditions because of their geographical location. But now outsiders like Nepalis and Bhutanese are settling in Totopara. As a result, they are losing their indigenous traditions, culture, heritage, and cultural identity, and even their mother tongue Toto language. Here are some related studies on Toto tribe. The first study was conducted by Abhijit Alka Anil in the year 2021. He stayed there for 4 years to conduct the study. He found that mobile phones, internet connection, packet foods like Lay's, Kurkure are easily available here. At that time, an Australian linguist named Toby Anderson along with his family, was staying there to script Toto language with the help of locals. On the other hand, Lisa Davies from London established an English medium primary school named Chittoranjan Toto Education Centre. The teachers are local Totos and funds are coming from crowdfunding. Although the writer came to know that in the name of quality education, some missionaries are luring Totos and converting them. The negative impact has also been seen in the rural economy, socio-cultural practices, food preferences, dresses, languages, and so on. The second study was conducted by Shahid Jamal, Akash Upadhyay, and Rachna Duad, and they did an in-depth study on Totos. The study found that due to modernization, their food habits, agriculture, occupation has been changed over the years. In Totopara, an outsider cannot differentiate between Totos and Nepalis because of their outer appearance. Therefore, Nepalis are misinterpreted by government officials and they are enjoying benefits like ration and etc. In the year 2019, Shambhu Prasad Chakraborty, Jayanto Ghosh, Bhopal Bhattacharjee and Shantanu Panda conducted a comparative study on four tribes from Darjeeling, Alipurduar, Bankura, and North Chobbish Pargona in terms of their socioeconomic condition, culture, and education. The study revealed that most of the tribal people from North Bengal have not attended schools. They are losing their indigenous culture due to Western influences through outsiders like Nepalis and Biharis. The impact has been seen on their in their rural economy, cultural identity, social unity, and so on. The fourth study was conducted by Pallab Devnath, Paramita Dash, Arup Kumar Shaha in the year 2019. They found that Totos are extremely weak in terms of economy. They are not aware and conscious about their children's education. They remain isolated due to lack of infrastructural facilities like transportation and communication, especially during the rainy season. Their literacy rate is very low, especially female literacy compared to surrounding tribal groups. The fifth study was conducted by Srini Dao in the year 2015. She did the study on survival of Totos in contemporary India. The study stated that Totos have been declared as a particularly vulnerable tribal group, and there are various central as well as state government schemes to develop bridges, house construction, ashram renovation, and school building construction. But in reality, Toto people have to cross seven rivers to reach the nearest town, Madarihat. In most of the time in a year, Totos remain disconnected from the other parts of the country due to lack of proper road communication. To pursue higher education and better employment, Totos have to experience horrific transportation, and poor Totos cannot afford this on daily basis. The last study was conducted by Sudhir Kumar Vishnu. He wrote that once the Totos were exclusively dependent on the forest for hunting and gathering fruits, nuts, and timber. Totopara was famous for its oranges and timber, but most agricultural lands were declared wasted as per Land Reformation Act 1969, and outsiders like Nepalis and Bhutanese occupied their lands. Gradually, Totos become landless in their own land and forced to live in poverty. This is the picture of a past and present of a Totopara. The picture is quite clear, and Totos are developing. But the development is not as beautiful as these pictures. Here are the objectives of my study. The first objective was to understand how Totopara has been changed due to modernization. Second was to analyze the positive as well as negative side of modernization on socio-cultural aspects and overall livelihood of Totos. Third one was to understand the impact of modernization on educational aspects in Totopara. My last objective was to find out ways of development in Totopara without changing their cultural identity. This is the methodology of my study. The study was totally qualitative. Five cases have been studied by using snowball sampling. Primary data have been collected through participant observation and semi-structured interview. Along with that, a semi-structured interview schedule and audio recorder has been used as research tools. Recent relevant literature has been analyzed to gather secondary data for the study. This is the research question and findings part 1. My first question was related to their age. The age limitation of the respondents were from 19 years to 55 years. My second question was related to their highest qualification and their profession. It has been seen that Totos follow multidimensional occupation. For example, one of the participants who is a graduate, by profession he is a hostel warden, tuition teacher, businessman, and an active member of panchayat. Another participant who has done his post graduation in library science. He is an animal husbandry by profession as well as a tuition teacher. On the other hand, the oldest participant is a government employee in the backward classes welfare department. He have completed his higher secondary. The youngest participant is graduating from Aviation College in English honors, and she is staying outside from her childhood. While the last participant is a graduate, she is working in a beauty parlor in Siliguri, and the rest of the male participants are settled in Totopara. My third question was related to the changes in Totopara, such as their attire, language, houses, societal norms, marriages due to the influence of modernization. All of the participants have mentioned that Totopara has immensely changed over the period. Nowadays, the Totos are preferring Western dresses even in their traditional programs. The youngest participants could not remember the name of their traditional attire. Although they speak in Toto language with their family and Toto friends, but they prefer Hindi, Nepali, and Bengali to speak outside. The traditional Toto houses are very rare in Totopara. Most of them have a one-story tin houses. Few of them are building roof houses with the help of Awas Yojana scheme. Once their societal norms were very rigid, but now intercaste marriages are on the rise. This is the picture of a Chittaranjan Toto Education Center established by Lisa Davis. This is research questions and findings part 2. My fourth question was related to the awareness of about TOTOs regarding government projects, subsidy schemes, and scholarships. Are they happy with these provisions, and what are their expectations from state as well as central government? All of the participants are well aware about government projects like Awas Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, scholarships, etc. There are well paved roads in plain areas of Totopara, but sadly, one has to cross the seven dry river beds by bus, and it is a horrific experience and expensive also. Totopara is an isolated village, and one has to pay at least 50 rupees to reach Totopara from Madarihat. That is only 22 kilometers away from Totopara. All of the participants think that the government should build bridges on these rivers to connect Totos with the surrounding towns. On the other hand, they also urge that the government should control the population of outsiders, as they believe that outsiders get more facilities than the native ones due to their large vote banks. My fifth question was related to the present generation of Totos. Are they losing their cultural identity and accepting modern culture? If so, then what should be done to preserve their culture? All of the participants think that the present generation of Totos are well educated. Most of them are staying outside for better education and jobs. They are not well aware of Toto culture, and westernization among youths, along with intercaste marriages, has been seen in Totopara. They are afraid that when Toto woman marries a man from another community, her children will adopt his father's native language rather than his mother's language. In this way, Toto language will vanish gradually along with its culture. For this purpose, the Toto youths have established Toto Kollan Shamiti to protect and preserve Toto language, culture, and indigenous education. This is the picture of one of dry river beds, and this is the only way to reach Totopara. My sixth question was related to the present educational scenario in Totopara due to involvement of foreigners. Is it beneficial or harmful for their survival? Present generation of Toto parents are working very hard to ensure quality education for their children, and there are no gender discrimination in modern day Toto families. On the other hand, there are two English medium private schools for primary level. One of them is established by a foreigner from London. All the teachers are locals, and from recent years, the Toto scripts are being used at the very beginning. An Australian-based linguist helped them to document their language. Although some of the missionaries are converting Totos and Christianity is increasing day by day, but still Totos feel that foreigners are helping them out from underdevelopment. My last question was related to the positive and negative aspects of modernization for the survival of Totos. Everything has a positive and negative aspects altogether, and modernization is not an exceptional one. All my participants believe that modernization is beneficial to get quality education, better employment, healthcare, internet connections, etc. But at the same time, there are problems like extreme westernization, intercaste marriages, availability of packet foods like kurkure, lays, etc. And more importantly, Totos are moving away from their cultural identity. Here are some suggestions to reduce these problems. First of all, Totos are particularly vulnerable tribal group. and they are facing existential threat as their survival is in danger. They need special reservation as they cannot compete with other HT communities. My second suggestion is that the government should recruit more educated Totos in local schools because they know the language and the culture. They would not take transfer like other teachers are doing in Totopara. They are taking transfer under Utshosri Prokolpo, and these totos will be employed in their locality, and most importantly, they will inspire Toto students to for higher education. My third suggestion is that the government should promote traditional dresses, programs, languages, uh, tribal stories, and foods in tribal fairs and social gathering. The government should improve transportation facilities because this is the main requirement, and there should be more awareness programs regarding education, health, and finance schemes. There should be more skill-based development programs because there are lack of alternative occupation, and the present study had been conducted on very small participants, and more studies should be done in this area to improve the present conditions of totos. And lastly, I believe that modernization is not dangerous, but education is more important. Education will empower them, and they can understand the positive and the negative aspects of modernization. They can take better decision, and otherwise some people like missionaries and local government and outsiders like Nepalis and Bhutanese will exploit them in the name of giving them quality education and better livelihood. Here are the references I have mentioned in related literature. Lastly, I would like to conclude this presentation with a strong quotation of Jamaican politician activist Marcus Garvey. He said that a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Thank you all. Thank you for giving me your precious time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that was well in time, Saheli. Very interesting paper, and I have a few things to say, but I'll wait for the second paper to be over, right? And I think we can kind of discuss both the papers together, right? So the second paper is by Antara Ghotta from the Department of English, St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. And Antara will be speaking on protest in the age of globalization, a study of the Sehbag, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, movement, Bangladesh. Over to you, Antara.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Oh, a very good afternoon to Dr. Prakash and Dr. Swati Maitro, and good afternoon. I'm honored to be a part of this conference, and I thank the organizers to have given me the opportunity of presenting my paper today. I was listening to Swati's paper, and this is a point from where I take this up that we will talk about a long past, of the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, and we are going to see that how, in the age of globalization, how this past, in context of justice and power, is negotiated. So, as you can see, the title of my paper is Protest in the Age of Globalization, a study of movement in Bangladesh. Here, I shall address the complex relations that exist between the attainment of justice and power in post war Bangladesh and how this is mediated by protest in the age of globalization through an analysis of the Shahbag movement, as stated in the title of my paper. The political climate of Bangladesh in 1971 and the series of incidents that led to the Shahbag movement require a closer scrutiny if we are to understand how it is instrumental in shaping a judicial system in context of redressal in post-war Bangladesh. In 1971, a civil war was fought between West Pakistan and East Pakistan, and an international war between West Pakistan and India. These two wars in 1971 are generally referred to by a single name, the Bangladesh Liberation War or the Mukti Juddho. The armed conflict started on 26 March 1971 between the state of Pakistan and East Pakistan, and India intervened on December 3rd, 1971. On 16th of December, the war ended and resulting in the secession of East Pakistan, which became the independent nation of Bangladesh. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, addressed as Bangabandhu, that is the father of the nation, by the people of Bangladesh, became the first prime minister of the nation. Officially, 3 million people were killed, 30 million became homeless, 200,000 to 400,000 women were raped, 10 million people were displaced or became refugees in neighboring India. Mass rape, sexual slavery, torture of the vulnerable people, unprecedented violence was unleashed by the local collaborators who were predominantly Bengali residents of East Pakistan with affiliations to the Muslim Jamaat-e-Islami Party, which is also known as the GI. As the Awami League formed the first government in 1972, a Bangladesh collaborators, that is a special tribunal, order was passed in 1973. The International Crimes Tribunal Act was created to establish a special court for the crime against humanity to try the collaborators, to try the Bengalis rather, who had collaborated during the 1971 genocide. The International Crimes Tribunal Act states, I quote, a tribunal shall have the power to try and punish any individual or group of individuals or any member of armed defense or auxiliary forces, irrespective of his nationality, who had committed or has who commits or has committed in the territory of Bangladesh, whether before or after the commencement of this act. However, after the assassination of Bangabandhu, that is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in 1975, the tribunal was suspended. The local collaborators and the religious fundamentalist forces became part of the ruling coterie and imposed impunity on the nation for a long period. Subsequently, an indemnity ordinance was passed in 1975 to repeal the 1972 order, giving an amnesty to the collaborators. During the intervening years of the military regime, that is 1975 to 1981, General Zia Rahman, leader of head of BNP, and 1982 to 1990, General Irshad, later head of the Jatiya Party. Many of the self-confessed collaborators held positions of power. But in 1992, this is one committee for uprooting the traitors and the collaborators of 1971 was formed, which is also known as, in Bengali, this is known as Ekattorer Ghatok Nirmul Committee, which was headed by Johanna Imam, and it organized a people's court, which was a very successful court known as the Gono Adalat, for trying the war criminals. The effort remained unsuccessful, but through an amendment in 2009, the Bangladesh government, led by the Awami League, reinstated the tribunal. ICT 1 Bangladesh, ICT 2 Bangladesh were reinstated in 2010 and 12 respectively, with the hope to deliver justice to the victims. I have given a lot of data, I have given a lot of dates, and I could have given the exact number of figures which were, the cases that were tried by the ICT. But I think that moving beyond the statistical data and insight into the lived experience would lead us to understand the trajectory of the insurmountable sorrow and the human perseverance of the survivors of the war. Noor Jahan Begum, the survivor of the war, recalled the brutal killings of her daughter Fatima in Yasmin Saike's book. She had interviewed actually many survivors of the war. This is her narration. Noor Jahan recounts, I quote, "My daughter Fatima was killed in front of my eyes. She had just got married 8 months before. They killed her husband with a sickle. They went into the room and pulled out Fatima. She was pregnant at the time. They molested her, tore her clothes, and slaughtered her like a chicken. I fainted when I saw it. They tore open her stomach and pulled out the unborn child and killed him too." Fazlul Bari, a reporter of Jonokonto, recounts the torture perpetrated by the collaborators. I quote, "Dead bodies were piled on dead bodies. The corpses of the babies laid on their mother's lap. The wife embraced her husband to save him. The river Bhadra, that is there's a kind of a local river there, the river Bhadra turned into the river of corpses and blood. After a few hours, when the Pakistani army ran out of bullets, they bayoneted to kill the rest of them. ICT 1 and ICT 2 hold immense importance for the nation scarred by a genocide awaiting justice. To address injustices of the most heinous kind of the tribunals in Bangladesh have been set up. Recognition of victimization of the utmost importance in a post-conflict society, because recognition leads to the right to repatriation, its rehabilitation, compensation, and memorialization. Unfortunately, the promises made by the tribunals were not delivered, and the procedures of the courts were severely criticized by the various human rights organizations. Bina Di Costa, she's a historian, I'm sorry for the background noise. The students are moving around. Pina de Costa, who is a historian, she notes, I quote, even with the Awami League's reassumption of the power 2 decades later, nothing was done about the war criminals and collaborators. Faced with massive poverty and economic hardship, War Crimes Tribunal was simply not high on the government agenda. Moreover, there were huge threats of violence from within Bangladesh by Jamaat-e-Islami. Many of the senior members were being put on trial for the war crimes by the ICT. There were ongoing death threats, strikes, intimidation, and other violent activities to try and stop the trials. The first verdict to be publicly announced was a verdict of guilty with a sentence of death penalty, but the defendant had left the country before being taken into custody. The verdict of the second case was announced on 5th February 2013. That this time the defendant was found guilty of 5 cases against him and he was given a sentence of life imprisonment. All these cases are available in the Crimes Tribunal, a website. That is what they have, and a brief, very detailed nature of their crimes has been given there, and the this particular second case is Abdul Qadir Mullah's case, and he left. He was given life imprisonment, and he left the courtroom showing a V sign for victory. It is at this juncture that Shahbag movement emerged. Thousands of people gathered in the square named after Shahbag, a popular neighborhood in Dhaka, demanding the death penalty of Mr. Abdul Qadir Mullah. Students and bloggers initiated non-violent sit-in protest using social media to spread the message. They ensured that the movement remained apolitical by denying leading politicians a platform to address the gathering and positioning the protest as pro justice rather than an ICT or anti ICT or anti government. Social media coverage of Shahbag was initiated through a creation of Facebook event by Bangladesh Online Activist Network known as the BOAN, and then subsequently through the use of Twitter. I'm going to give you a very brief detail that how this local has been negotiated into the global. For that, I have to give you some kind of statistical data. Users, these online users were mainly young people, those in Dhaka or Bengalis living in other parts of the world. Over a million tweets by 17,000 users were recorded regarding hashtag Shahbag. There have been numerous articles written regarding the use of social media during Shahbag because of its predominance of new users and its use as centralized information source. Over 89% of users had less than 10 connections and were new users who had joined Twitter just for Shahbag. They mainly retweeted tweets through their networks or liked them. There were a group of 25 activists and bloggers who were the source of information regarding Shahbag, who generated initial tweets, some of who had already an established following the organic opinion for focusing on Shahbag. However, there was no specific leadership or organization identified from the online activity. And it was in the February 2013 that saw the highest number of tweets, that is 5,000 people joining Twitter on 7th of February. This has happened on the 5th of February, the case of Qadir Mullah. After those, actually, those were in Bangladesh. There were social media users from 40 different countries other than users in Bangladesh. There were 5,000 tweeters from the United States of America, 3,500 from the United Kingdom. Of the hyperlinks shared, 32% were news media, 28% Twitter, 20% Facebook, 10% blog, and 6% YouTube. These have been taken from the extensive research paper that was published. There are so this is the expanse of this social media that had been initiated in the sit-in protest. And what happened, the thing that was in a positive way, that the government responded and processed an initial address to the demands of Shahbag by introducing an amendment to the 1973 Act. On 17 February 2013, the Bangladeshi Parliament passed a bill amending the International Crimes Tribunal Act of 1973, and the amendments present three significant changes. The trial of the organization. Previously, they were out of this, religious and fundamental organization. Prosecution, right to appeal sentencing, and the third was disposal of the appeal within 60 days. So these were the very specific terms, legal parlance that was revised and amended. On 21st of February, the spokesperson of Shahbag announced that the end of the 24-hour sit-in at Shahbag Square and reframed Shahbag as a nationwide program. So this is a brief history. Now, if you're talking about protest in the age of globalization, I would like what I would like to say is that protest in relation to space is a very emerging aspect in the age of globalization. The use of social media explored different dimensions that included virtual and the real places, spaces, personal and collective spaces. Social media played a key role in digital activism and meant that those who were abroad could play an active virtual role in Shahbag, as was the case of such movements as the Tahrir Square in Egypt or the Occupy Wall movement in the United States. Social media has meant that communication about a protest can be spread across a vast array of networks at high speed, so that different protest spaces can emerge simultaneously and coordinate activities. It offered an alternative space from mainstream media, giving subjective rather than objective reporting in real time, offering a commentary and a space where the voice of the protester can be heard directly. Shahbag was a little kind of a little different, as this space was not connected to the protest issue. It was not outside the court, immediately outside the court, or given a very specific location. It was a space near the students' bloggers university where the local journalists and cultural activists would meet in local tea stall at a major interchange in the city. The reimagining of the Bengali identity was also of interest, and the initial demand for the hanging of collaborator was yet another protest itself, and it reconstructed the celebration of the cultural ethos of the Bangladesh Liberation War. As Bangladesh celebrates its 50 years of liberation in 2022, Yasmin Saikia reflects the inherent ethical complexities in the context of the tribunals in Bangladesh. She notes, I quote, is a war criminals tribunal an alternative? Who will try the criminals? Who has the authority to do so? Reconciliation and forgiveness are subjects of enormous ethical possibility, but the will to execute them requires political determination of both governments, Pakistan and Bangladesh, as well as the public opinion favoring the process and cultural thinking to go ahead and reopen the wounds of 1971 for a final closure. I close. Through a microhistorical analysis of any post conflict society, it may be observed that the dominant histories of the state centric conflicts are frequently stories recounted by the state and its elites. Civilians who experienced enemy aggression are blended into the background, thus becoming a little more than a part of the traumatized landscape. Their narratives are appropriated by the state, which in turn gains elements of legitimacy by telling stories on behalf of the victims. The historiography of liberated Bangladesh was not any exception. It was a tale, I quote, well told, subsuming the voice of the ordinary people. The Shahbag protest, with its global participants, provided the possibility and offered a safe public space, very importantly for women as well, to express their lived experience about the war, free from party and political discourse. It was not about leadership, but courage, solidarity, and strength of people. Media coverage and social media amplified the Shahbag message for justice, and original initiators of the movement could only manage the ongoing flow of the people who were self motivated by their consciences to participate and support the government. The core initiators were unknown faces, and the groups who shifted their position to align with the spirit of the cause was for it was for the justice cause for the, justice first. It provided an inclusive, democratic, emotional space for the collective voice, which never found its expression in the glorious historiography of the Bangladesh. It brought in voices not only from the Bengali community but from the entire world, informed the younger generation about the atrocities of the war crimes and the politics of memorialization, thereby rekindling the human spirit of perseverance. The local and the global voices of the Shahbag protest impel us to rethink about the nature of violence committed, and it paved way for the transnational justice in Bangladesh with a promise. with a movement away from the authoritarian and fundamental thoughts to a more democratic regime, thus attempting to reconstruct the ideas of justice and redressal. That is how where I conclude my paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antara, for this fascinating paper. I think we've had two very interesting papers. And before I open the floor for discussion, I just would like to add a couple of thoughts of mine. And if at all Saheli and both Antara would like to respond, then I think you can. Otherwise, we can kind of move on to other people who would want to ask. So. Sahili, with regard to your paper, I just would like to say a couple of things while we are talking about, and it's something entirely new for me. I don't have much of an idea about the Roto tribe, but you were talking about the Nepali and Bhutanese settlements, right? I was just wondering about if you could go, a bit into the detail in terms of the timeline of the settlements, because the paper doesn't really highlight, I mean, the time period when these settlements happened, and what really is, let's say, the percentage of various communities that are there, basically in the region of Alipurduar where you have these tribes. The second curiosity that I had was again about the very project of modernization, and in what way. Of course, your paper talks about that it has a vast impact on, let's say, culture. It has an impact on language, on food, on attire, but the paper doesn't really highlight the transition of the change. So I was just wondering about, when you refer to attire, when you refer to food, I would like to know more about in what way, let's say, the food habits have gone through a process of change, right? So wherein you do talk about the intervention from the outside, wherein you talk about, I think, packaged food or fast food. But then I was just wondering about, when you have to refer to the Toto tribe and the food habits in particular, then in what way there has been a kind of a change. Also, to move on, I was just wondering about, when you talk about the very project of education, and how education had also an impact on the tribe, and also this very idea of modernization. I was just wondering about the texts that are actually being discussed as part of the entire educational project. What are the texts, what is the curriculum, what is the syllabi, right? And maybe if you haven't looked into the syllabi or the text, then maybe you could, or if you have already, then maybe you could talk about a bit about the texts that are at the center of discussion. Because I think when you again highlight the point of education, I think this follow-up question is, what exactly are the texts that we are looking at, right? And what these texts are actually talking about. Now, also, when you say the government should basically bring in changes, and the government should really think of preserving the culture, then at times uh, I guess we get very apprehensive, because again, there have been projects of preservation that have come from the government, and I don't know whether they really resulted in the way that they were really imagined, right? So then, do we just look at government as a body that should really be taking care of, right, the very question of preserving the culture or the language, right? Or do we look at beyond the policies of the government? Because I don't know, there are times wherein the policies of the government haven't really contributed the way they really should have. So these are some of the observations that I had about your paper. The second paper, again, talking about the protests in the age of globalization, Shahbag movement. Again, fascinating paper, Antara. I don't know. I think I wanted to know more from you, on the lines of basically protests in the age of globalization, right? Because you do talk about that, but I just wanted, some more deliberation, in terms of how social media works as, a tool of protest. Because often, when you talk about social media, I don't know how democratic social media is, as a tool of protest, because often social media is controlled by the private agencies, right? And private agencies have fair bit of control in terms of what should really be a part of the public domain and what should not be, right? And I think when you talk about social media, then I think censorship then becomes a very important also point of discussion. While of course I mean, uh, you do talk about virtual and real and local and global, and in what way solidarities are formed across social media tools. But then there have been some really interesting work. For instance, there is one work by John Postel, and his book is The Rise of Nerd Politics, and colon digital activism and political change. And in this work, June Postel in fact talks about uh, again the very idea of the nerd, wherein he talks about young people who actually are writing across social media portals, and who are basically sitting at home and yet changing the very discourse of what forms the public, right? So maybe you could have a look at this particular work while you look further into the very idea,
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
while you look into the into the basically issue of protest in the age of globalization.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
there's a work by Zeynep Tufekci, Zeynep, Zeynep Tufekci. And Zeynep's work is titled Twitter and Tear Gas, The Power and Fragility of Network Protest. And it talks about in what way the network, protest, actually work, and in what way networked protests, are at times interrupted by, let's say, private agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
How at times the nation states, basically create all kind of hurdles, when it comes to protest that happens, in the age of globalization. So I was just thinking about, do we also then talk about the very issue of how democratic social media is as a space of protest, right? And also just thinking about when we talk about the post pandemic, in a way the very space of social media as a tool of protest has really gone through a change, right? So these are not directly linked with Shehbag movement, but it is
No, but yes, when you're talking about the Shaheen Bagh movement, it got affected due to the 2019 COVID, and the protest was much diluted later on. So it does. It is actually a very insightful commentary, and I've definitely look into these.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, I don't know if Swati, Mutro, Dr. Mutro is still around, and if she would want to add to your paper, because I think that her paper was aligned with what you spoke.
Mm.
So that is
About
all.
the past, yes.
That is all I had to, really say about both the papers, and really interesting papers. Now over to you, Sahili and Antara, if you want to say something, or uh, we can open the floor for further question answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I will definitely look in this areas. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Sahili. Uh, other
Yes, as you commented that how a democratic media has never been democratic right from the age of Milton. If you can trace it from there. I mean, but these movements are important because it, in some way or the other, it does try to break in, to critique all these, and maybe, I mean, these are some parts where we can look into forward for a promise of being an inclusive voice across the society. But I will definitely look up the books that you have suggested, and this will help me develop my paper. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Other people, if anyone who would like to, let me see if there is something in the comment box. I think there is a Google form. I don't know, like which I think you all have to fill in. But if there is any other question from other, people who have joined this particular session, then please go ahead. All right. I don't think there are, you know, any more questions. So I believe, I don't know when is the next session, but I guess we can close this session now. So thank you,
So,
both
yeah,
the, presenters, both the speakers. I think this session has been quite informative, as fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
thank you, Dr. Prakash. Uh, প্রসেনজিৎ মণ্ডল, নির্বাচিত রডসে প্রজ্ঞা, Tanjit Tonon, and Sreyoshi Mitra. They are, I think, are absent, and uh, should we start or end this meeting? So
All right.
wait, or
I guess.
or
Wait. Can could you come again? Because I believe in this session there were three papers, right? It is the
yeah.
post break session, and I think the first speaker is not around, and two papers we already had. So do we have more papers in this session?
Nirvachita Radse Proga, I think she is absent. So
She's absent, right?
yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and then I think we just had two papers, one by Saheli and the other by
Yeah.
Antara Ghotam.
Antra
So,
Bhatta.
so
Okay.
I don't think we have more
No,
papers
no, 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 no.
particular session.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all the participants. Thank you the audience. And okay,
Thank you. Thank you so
okay.
much.